G'day, it's official. Jack Doohan will drive for Alpine in 2025. He will probably be the third Australian on the grid. Alpine announced in early June that Esteban Ocon would not be driving for them in 2025, which has led to plenty of speculation about his replacement. Well, today, via press release, it was revealed that indeed Jack Doohan will be taking his seat. Of course, Alpine could have had two Australian drivers had they not have lost Oscar Piastri to McLaren in 2022. Let's go back to Sunday race day at Spa. I was talking to Jack in the paddock for about 10 minutes, and at some point he mentioned that somebody was in the Alpine hospitality suite that was very important to his future, and I got the impression from that note that he'd actually got the gig. And I said, "Is that right?" And he goes, "Yeah." So at that point, I actually started penning an Instagram post saying that he'd got the drive because I thought the announcement was imminent. And he said, "Let's have a look at it." And then he said, "Well, we can't say that just yet." I thought, oh, how did I get that so wrong? But from that chat, it was apparent to me that he knew he was going to get the gig. So who was that person in the hospitality suite? It was this man, Carlos Honoro, who is Carlos Sainz's manager. When Carlos came out of that Alpine hospitality suite, which was brand new, it's the first time it was seen in the paddock, the pair chatted for probably 5 or so minutes. At the time, I didn't know what it's about, but today, I have no doubt it was about the fact that Carlos had decided to go with Williams because that was announced shortly thereafter. And because Carlos was going to take the Williams drive, that left Jack Doohan at the head of the queue for that Alpine seat. I'm not sure if you know Jack's father, Mick Doohan, a former 5-time world 500cc motorcycle champion. I actually had a chat with Mick, when was it? Probably a race or two prior to that. And he let slip something about contracts taking a lot of time. From that conversation, I gleaned that negotiations were well advanced, pending perhaps Carlos's decision. But I'll come back to Mick Doohan a little later on in this video. So what is Jack like? Well, he's a friend of mine and a joy to be around. One of Jack's big strengths is his ability to network in the paddock. He works his bum off, don't get me wrong there. In fact, going back to the Monaco GP, I was having a pizza at Flavio Briatore's restaurant down at Rascas on the Wednesday prior to the race weekend, and Jack was about, and he came over and chatted with me and my son Jace for about 10 minutes about life. We chatted briefly about where he might end up, but certainly from that chat I gleaned that it was frustrating being in his position, that he was close, but just wasn't able to get it over the line at that point. I often see him chatting to journalists in the paddock too. He's very good with that. This is Aaron, one of the Dutch journos. But from what I see, he's one of the hardest workers. He obviously does a lot of time on the simulator. He works with clients at the track. He's likeable, honest. And I don't think he's too far off Daniel Ricciardo in terms of personality. Perhaps not quite as bubbly or out there, but he's certainly more outgoing than, say, Oscar Piastri, his other countryman. Sponsors love him too. I remember him giving me one of these Palace jackets going back to the Vegas race, which I was most grateful for because it was so bloody cold that night that it came in very handy. He's replacing Esteban Ocon, and I saw Esteban and him knocking around a fair bit at the track. They appear to be very good friends. Certainly I caught him coming in at Qatar from the car park in this pose, but I also see him chatting with Daniel, with Oscar, Liam, and in particular Mick Schumacher. He has a special relationship with Mick. They've known each other since childhood. Mick's dad, the great Michael Schumacher, is good friends with Mick Doohan. In fact, Michael Schumacher gave Jack Doohan his very first go-kart. It was a gift from Michael. And Mick Schumacher is actually named after Mick Doohan. The last time I saw Jack race was 2023, last race of the year in Abu Dhabi, and he won that race, and then there was great celebration afterwards on the podium and down below the podium when he was in the presence of his mum and his dad and his girlfriend Ebony Zapora. And did Jack do a shoey? He did. Inspired by Daniel Ricciardo, no doubt. Let's jump back to Jack's dad, Mick, legendary motorcycle rider. First race was in '89, last one in '99, raced against his son in Melbourne this year. Not a serious race, just a bit of fun on track where Mick rode a bike, Jack drove a car. But Mick won 5 championships in a row, 94 to 98 inclusive. And he won 40% of the races that he raced in. Last Sunday, after speaking to Jack in the paddock, I had a chat with Mick, who was sitting patiently out the front of the hospitality suite. We talked for a bit about where Jack was going, and from that chat I gathered the impression it was close, but it was just frustrating for him Nothing he could do. It was all in the hands of the team, but certainly today I imagine he is jumping for joy. He comes to a number of races with Jack and is well liked in the paddock and well connected. In fact, he had Johnny Depp stay at one of his houses in Queensland, and actually I had a few houses in Queensland for a time, one not too far from his in Palm Beach, and they call that area Bris Vegas, a wannabe Las Vegas, with only one casino though. But I digress. Well, what was I saying? Oh yeah, Johnny Depp actually stayed at one of Mick's houses while on holidays in Australia and so liked it that he told his good friend Brad Pitt to also come and stay there. So Mick is well connected in those Hollywood circles. Not to say that Jack's not well connected. I caught him having a good long chat with this man, Kansas City quarterback Patrick Mahomes, for some time in the Miami pit lane. And he was very much holding his own. In fact, he is an eloquent speaker and a real character. I often photograph him doing corporate gigs up at Paddock Club and the like, and you've probably seen him on television too, on F1 or even on Sky. Very direct, tells it like it is, and I think he'll be marvellous for the PR people at Alpine. I like his sense of humour. I remember taking this picture of him coming into the track in Canada. This was on the other side of the river, and he was a bit dark about having to park so far away and having to walk back in the rain. Of course, the F1 drivers get the very best parks near the pontoon that goes over the lake. He had to walk a couple of 100 metres, but that won't be the case next year. He will be getting one of these prime parking spots. First time I photographed Jack was back in Mexico in 2022 when he was doing one of his 6 Formula One free practice sessions. He did Mexico twice, he did Abu Dhabi twice, and then earlier this year, Canada and Great Britain. Plus, he did a show run at Barcelona. So he has spent time behind the wheel of an F1 car on race weekends and around city streets. I'll give you a quick rundown of his history. He started karting in 2012 with that gifted kart from Michael Schumacher. At the age of 15, took up Formula 4 in Britain. Also had a couple of races in German and Italian Formula 4 that year. 2019 came second in the F3 Asian Championship and raced in Euro Formula. He raced in F3 in 2020 and 2021, finishing 26th and 2nd, respectively, and also drove 6 races in F2 in 2021. He raced in F2 in 2022 and 2023, finishing 6th and 3rd. There's no doubt him being signed in 2022 to the Alpine Academy was a big positive for his career, and in 2025 he will be the youngest driver on the grid if Kimi Antonelli does not get the gig at Mercedes. So next year Alpine will have an Australian alongside a Frenchman in Pierre Gasly racing for the team. Now, they're not the best team, and they certainly need to show a whole lot of improvement, but every driver has to get their start, and he'll be thrilled to be having his first race on home soil in Australia in Melbourne next year. And I think he'll be pretty happy that there are 2 other Australians, Daniel and Oscar, to share the limelight. It would be pretty tough for a rookie to come in their home race first up and face all of that pressure. I like Jack. He will be a welcome addition to the F1 grid, and I think Aussies will take to him big time. Of course, he'll be the only Aussie not to have won a race when he takes to the track in Melbourne, but I'm sure he'll be doing his darndest to turn that situation around. Well done to Jack Doohan from Queensland. He'll be suiting up in Alpine kit in 2025. It's certainly an exciting time for Australian F1 fans. Well, for F1 fans in general. At the moment, 2 rookies lining up on the grid next year, with Oliver Bearman being the other one. And if you are a fan of Ollie, remember, you can get your hands on these signed prints by heading to kimellman.com. There are other drivers too that you can pick up prints from. So once you finish watching this video, feel free to head to kimellman.com. With that said, I'll thank you for watching this video and urge you to stay passionate. No.